ladies and
posters you
gentlemen,
had on your room
just
in high school?
kind of to tell you why there's a delay.
I've got some more.
One board member will not be here tonight. He'll be excused for sickness. Another is on the way. Well, two others are supposedly on the way. We can't start officially without a quorum, so we're waiting to. So that's why there's a delay. We should have already started. Okay, I'll call this continuation meeting to order. Let the record show we were a few minutes late. Okay, the first item I have, I'd like to call the board's attention. I need to modify the agenda to add a reappointment of Ms. McRae to the EDC. She has been our appointee to the Economic Development Commission, and her term is very close to being up, and we need to reappoint her tonight. Do I hear a motion to modify the agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Okay. All right. I'll call for a motion to reappoint Ms. McRae to the Economic Development Commission. You make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right. You second it, Mr.
Second.
Kinsey? Okay. All in favor? Okay. The other item I need to do real quick, and I should have done it first, we need to excuse Council Member Billy Mashburn tonight.
I move we excuse Billy.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay. All right, is anything else that I need to bring up before we get into the rest of the items on the agenda? Okay. Take care of it. The first item on the agenda tonight is discussion of the non-funding funding pool applicants with the town council. And okay, the first request is for $3,000 from the Arts Council. Is there any questions, concern, or anything anyone would like to bring up concerning that request?
Mr. Mayor and Board,
Yes.
the first one I believe is Appalachian Animal Rescue Center.
5,000.
I thought they didn't.
Oh gosh, they're down at the bottom of my list here. I don't know how that happened. Okay, I stand corrected. Appalachian Animal Rescue.
Is anyone here?
Yes, Kathy's here. Everybody's read the application? Okay. Madam Manager, we want to vote on these individually, or Counselor, how would we?
I think the board is traditionally, the former Board of Alderman always took the approach of just sort of sorting through
Okay.
any that weren't going to be funded, and then how do you approach the ones that would.
And then go
Just
back.
approve them en masse.
Okay.
I would suggest that we look at it more about those who have hesitations about some of the applicants.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be easier to get there than
Oh, wait, run that one time again.
I would
I lost you.
probably just open it up for the ones that want to have discussion as to whether the funding would be appropriate or not, assuming the others would be if they're silent.
How y'all feel about that? That be agreeable with the board? Have any of you got any that has raised flags? I've got a couple that have, I'd like to discuss
Start
further.
us off.
Pardon?
Start us off.
Okay. Okay, the Macon New Beginnings has requested $3,750, and that is to pay the rent on the community building, the JC Park, on Thursday nights. And we talked about this last year, and we turned that down last year. And
What's the current usage? As you, sir? Currently, what usage is it of?
We get an average of 34 people that show up
How frequently do you use the building?
every week, every Thursday at 6 o'clock.
And you have for how long?
We've done this since January of 2015.
All right.
And last year there was some confusion over whether Serving Spoon and Making New Beginnings was one entity, and that. So while there was partial funding of the rent for that facility last year.
well, and I think that the issue was, Mr. Burke, that that we could not let y'all have that building every Thursday night for a year because it's a multi-purpose building and it's open to all first come, first served. That we just can't, there are scout troops, there are reunions, there are all manner of things that use that building, and we just cannot allow a public building like that to be used every night.
Well,
A particular
we
night.
have since for a year and a half now.
But they reserve it every time they need it.
Yeah, we're first come, first served every time.
That's right.
I see.
Now there are 2 weeks that we don't use the facility. One, obviously, the fire department gets it in July. They requested,
Right.
so.
But basically, you're asking us to waive the fee that we charge everybody else.
No, actually, we're coming before you and presenting as a funding pool request. And we're just gonna turn around and give it back to you. So, you know, we're out here with the rest of the community asking for funds for a community fund.
But your funds are going for the rent of it.
Obviously, yeah,
Mhm.
that's what we're requesting
Okay.
for. And it goes back into your general fund.
Can I ask, do you feel like you're serving the neediest people in the community, or?
I
Yeah,
couldn't
but what-
answer about the neediest people. Certainly the people that show up, they have all sorts of needs. We don't ask any questions. Anybody can come. Any one of the council members can come. Any poorest person, whoever that may be, or to the richest person. It's open to anybody and everybody. There's no criteria whatsoever. If you're hungry and show up, you get fed.
But the serving spoon itself is not a 501c3.
The serving spoon is part of Making New Beginnings,
But
which is
it's
a
not a,
501c3.
but you are asking for this, basically for the serving
For
spoon.
this program, yeah. It's a
So the
feeding
Serving
program
Spoon is a program that's administered by the
by Making New Beginnings.
Making New Beginnings.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, have y'all been offered other places to meet?
We had an offer from the Legion, the American Legion. Their rent is considerably more. So we've opted to stay in that convenient location right there. We used to meet in the Happy Days, but donut shop, but that just wasn't real conducive to. The facility's a perfect facility.
Okay,
And we have handicapped folks, we have folks of all walks of life show up. And we've got over 14 churches now that are involved in providing a hot meal every week.
are there not churches that would allow you to use their facilities?
We prefer a neutral site so that we're not conceived as being proselytizing anybody. All the churches are doing this at their own volition. The people come at their own volition. We do pray before a meal, but we don't go out and actually browbeat people or anything like that. It's,
Madam Manager Travis, how frequently do we have to bump somebody from Thursday night because of letting them use it?
On a Thursday night, it's been very, very rare. The largest use of the JC or Memorial Park is your Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But I know in the past we have worked with this particular group with the understanding they book anywhere from 2 weeks to the most we'll let them book in advance is a month for that purpose.
I would hate to lose a resource if it just be a matter of accommodation from time to time on a Thursday that may or may not be coming and asking myself.
Well, I would have a question that if we were to grant this, how could we not grant waiving the fee for any other group that wants to use it?
they can come before the board and ask for funding every year like we do.
To my knowledge, we don't waive the fee.
Of course, he's not really waiving the fee.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
That's sort of what brought about this
Kind of going
process.
through
Last
the
year,
channel.
they asked that we couldn't do that. This was the process we asked them to go through. And
Right.
The reason we couldn't fund them last year, I do believe, was because you asked for two funding things, ended up in that same pool, and it went over
Well, I
that
think-
$5,000 mark.
I would be concerned that we're opening up for every other group in the town to come and want their fee waived as well. If we do it for you, we've got to do it for everybody. And I don't care how you're putting it. You're asking us to waive the fee and allow you to use it every Thursday night, 50 Thursdays a year.
With respect, Mayor,
Mhm.
I don't think we're asking, and this is just my opinion, I don't think we're asking to waive the fee. What we're asking is any community funding pool consistent with whatever your criteria is to get community funding, come before this board once a year and ask for that funding. That's all the process that we're doing. Otherwise, we would have come directly and asked the city to waive it. Last year, we asked them, we said, you know, we're just turning around and paying the fee. You raised the fee. We're just there for 2 hours on a Thursday, and all we want to do is feed Franklin, people who come in from Franklin. And frankly, if that's called waiving the fee, I'm missing that. Because we're going through the same hoops that any other community funding pool member would do.
But you're also asking us, by doing that, to let you have it every Thursday night for a year.
Except for a couple.
Well, what if somebody else wants to use it on a
It
Thursday
may be at
night?
some, well, you know, we
I mean-
asked the question, it's a matter of priorities, and it's a matter, if I felt like I could get good use out of that building for 50 weeks, and maybe somebody on an occasional basis may not be able to use it on a Thursday night, if it was to help folks who need a good meal, I'm okay with that. It's a decision that the board, you know, obviously will need to make, but I'm not troubled by that at all.
But you're not generating any revenue.
I'm
It's
not,
out of one pocket into the other as far as the town's
I
concerned.
know, I mean, I know the 3750 will be in one pocket and right back to the other. Absolutely right. I'm with you there.
And I would venture if somebody came before we got to the office, I don't know, you know, what time we come every week. I don't come here every week, but if somebody got there before us, then obviously that Thursday is taken, so we can't use that.
Well,
I
then-
don't know if there's any other community funding members that have had to return funds because they didn't spend it all. Obviously, if we don't do 50 weeks, if we do 48 or 30 or whatever it is, then the town gets the money back.
But you said there's no criteria for who's served here.
Not at
You
all.
have no criteria at all. It's just wide open.
What's your
Whatever else
average number of people that come?
We have about 32 to 34. We've had as few as 9, and that was when we had a snowstorm last year.
Yeah.
And we've had as many as 56, so we put people out into the pavilions to feed.
So in effect, we're helping for, say, $2 a person to provide meals to those people who are in need.
And we have folks
Which is
from all walks of
pretty
life.
Yeah.
Disabled folks, we have, you know, people who ride there on their lawnmowers, people who walk.
Well, I
It may-
think it's up to this board, but I would warn the board that you're setting a precedent to allow anybody to come in and utilize that building every night for a year. If we grant this, we're gonna have to grant, we're a public body, we have to be fair. And we'd have to grant the same thing, whether, if a scout troop came, whatever it is, we're gonna have to let them use that building on a night of their choosing for a year, or we're not
Well-
gonna be fair about it.
I think that we wouldn't have to do that. I think we would have to ask them to make their case. And if they made a good case and it was serving a public need,
And they would have to go through the same channel that they are as well. You know, they,
yeah.
And this can't be like self-sustaining. To my personal belief, anyway, somebody speak to me if I'm wrong here, but it can't be self-sustaining. So the idea would be after this year, we're not going to grant the same funding to give them the building again because it's the same thing. So they'll be paying us $3,700 a year, $3,500 a year. That will generate income next
All
year.
right, okay.
Because it's a one-time non-self. They should be able to get them to a point that holds them there.
But what if
That-
you
and
get
that does
another
raise a
group?
good point in terms of the nonprofit funding program that the town has set, is that recurring expenses that are of an operational kind of nature are not generally funded. So I would say if any others came in and said, we need, you know, it's for this same expense we're going to have year over year over year, you generally don't do those. So I think that Adam makes a really excellent point.
All right,
Anyone else?
so what's the pleasure of the board?
Let's figure out some others. that
See how
have
much money we
issues.
have.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have enough money.
I know we don't have
I'll
enough
tell you
money,
that
right.
up front. Okay. All right, the men's, okay, thank you. The men's team challenge, is anyone here to speak for that? The men's team challenge is not located in the town. It serves only men, and I just don't know whether it's a fit. You all have all been through your packet there. I don't know that a $5,000 grant would be appropriate for the nonprofit funding pool.
Mr. Mayor, I agree. I have some legal concerns about a grant to an organization that hasn't expressly sort of what in a public entity would be a discriminatory sort of act. I think you're going to have to require that they be serve anybody regardless of gender and other things.
All right, if there's no further discussion on that, the next one is Mountain Mediation Services. There's a problem with this because it would be funding a position. And this is something that under the nonprofit funding pool rules, we don't fund a paid position. Is that right?
Again, I would characterize that as sort of an operational expense, and that's not the sort of thing that the funding pool is meant for. I agree.
Any further discussion on that one? The Read to Me program is asking for $3,000, but at the same time, we're having a request of $5,000 from the Literacy Council, and the Read to Me program comes under the Literacy Council.
No, it doesn't. That's incorrect.
All right, you want to come up here and tell us what's going on?
Those are two separate entities completely. Read to Me is its own 501c3 nonprofit. What we're asking it for is for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library that we do within the town of Franklin. The Literacy Council's request, as I understand it, is for their Franklin tutoring program. Because I thought this question would come up. The front of your packets that you got, the synopsis, mentions the Dolly Parton program, but that was more information about the Literacy Council. If you actually read what they're asking the funds for inside the application, it specifically states that Franklin area tutoring program, and it has nothing to do with what we do. They're two separate organizations completely.
But they're under the same umbrella.
No, they are not. I've been on the Read to Me board since its inception 6 years ago. Literacy Council of Highlands is a completely separate organization that's been operating for decades in Maine. They're based out of Highlands. They have nothing to do with us. We have our own boards entirely.
They're based out of Highlands, but they serve Franklin students
Well, why did-
with this tutoring
well,
program.
somewhere I read
they're both-
they're
both-
linked together.
Probably, well, I think the Literacy Council also uses
The
the Dolly
Imagination
Parton.
Library
yeah.
is a joint organization. We, as Read to Me, we provide for the Franklin area. We provide the funding for the kids that fall in the Franklin area, which are the majority of the kids in the program. Actually, it costs about $35,000 a year to run that program. And the Highlands Literacy Council also partners with us on that program. But that's not what they're asking the funds for.
Well,
They're
I've
separate
got
programs.
right here in front of me, it says the Literacy Council, Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
But they're not asking, that's something that they do, but that's not what they're asking for funds for. They're two completely separate organizations.
It says we provide 100% free educational opportunities to help children and adults. And it says our program includes,
They do the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. But that's not what they're asking funding from you for. They're asking, in their application, it says they're doing it for the
Yeah.
Franklin area tutoring
Says
program.
funding will be used to support the expense associated with the Franklin tutoring program.
Correct.
Okay.
okay. Any further questions? Okay. All right, moving on. That was the only ones that I had that had raised a flag with me. Basically, yes, sir.
I have a question, and I don't know whether anybody from the Streets of Franklin Heritage Association is here.
Streets of Franklin Heritage Association. No one's here.
Their application says that they're a 501c3, but didn't submit a letter with it. Did you?
I never did get one.
And I checked on that. I don't find that there's a lookup. There's an online lookup for 501c3 organizations, and I don't find them on there. Traditionally, I mean, if the board wants to support that program, that'd be fine. Traditionally, you have required a non-501c3 to do it on a reimbursement basis. So
Okay.
it's the pleasure of the council to approve that one. I would just recommend you do it on a reimbursement basis.
I'm sorry, John, which one?
The street
Streets of
Those for those
Freedom.
Christmas decorations? Or, I mean, not Christmas decorations.
Yeah, those,
Again, the application states it's a 501c3, but I don't believe it is.
I wonder if we could find another way to support them, because that it is actually an improvement to the streets.
Well, and again, I'm not saying not to, but it's
No,
sort
I
of like
mean,
with the garden
but
club.
not through the nonprofit thing.
Well, I think we have with the garden club, was never incorporated, and I think in the past when they were funded through the board, I believe.
In the past, they were. However, moving forward, in the past 3 years, they've been supported through the beautification of the town, and it's a line item in the town budget.
That might be a better place to get the money, if we have the money.
I mean, I can certainly check. I'd be glad to. I mean, right off the top of my head, I mean, the only other thing you can take from is your beautification.
But that's what
you
they're.
commit $2,500 now to the garden club, and there's only $5,000 in there, and that beautification goes a lot for your garden out front. And then if you take $1,000, that'd be one place you could take it.
I don't know.
And admittedly, that was the thing I was the least enthusiastic about supporting. Felt like everything else was doing more to help people who needed help, and that was just, decorative, which is nice, but I felt like in my mind it was less important than helping people out.
Okay, so that gets us to 44.7.
Well, I mean, that's just my opinion.
If in fact there was a motion to the effect that if we eliminated the men's team challenge, the mountain mediation services, and the Streets of Franklin Heritage Association, and then considered the rest of them favorably with a percentage, which would be probably 97%, or whatever percentage of each of them necessary to reach the budgeted amount of 40,000. Have everyone be reduced by whatever percentage on an across-the-board basis to get down to that number. How would the board feel about that?
well, I don't have a vote in it, but I was hoping we would avoid that this year. We've done that in the past. And I'm not sure that's fair to the ones that we reduced their amount that are totally qualified.
It's
Or the amount.
arbitrary. We put 5,000 or a cap. I mean, so, we arbitrarily putting a cap on it. That's
Well,
reducing it.
no, we had $52,250.
I mean,
But the
for
request
each
is
app.
5,000.
And we had $40,000.
Okay. I would make a motion.
I second Joe's motion.
You don't know what it is yet.
I would make a motion that we do not fund the teen challenge,
Okay,
the mediation on the Streets of Franklin. Fund the others to the percentage across the board that would allow us to utilize $40,000.
so you're also gonna fund the Making New Beginnings,
That's right.
okay? So the only things that you're not funding, that you would make a motion not to fund is the Men's Team Challenge, Mountain Mediation Services,
And Streets of Franklin.
and Streets of Franklin.
That's right. That's
All right, before you vote, I think I can get into the discussion too. I don't have a vote. But I will say that you're setting a precedent that's gonna come back to haunt us in the future over the rental of the community building. We're gonna have to renew the methods and how you sign up to use that building. And I think even if there's not money involved, if a scout troop comes to us and says they want to use it every Wednesday night for a year, I don't see how we can turn them down. Just because we're doing this in the nonprofit funding pool doesn't mean that it can impact who can use that building. Now, I'm sorry, folks. I know about the Making New Beginnings. We went through this last year. And I don't mind them renting it on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, 2 weeks at a time. But we're locking that building up on every Thursday night for a year.
We're getting the use of it every Thursday night for
Yeah.
a year. That's
Yeah,
the way
but
I'm
They're,
looking at it.
and they're
Yeah.
still to be required to come and ask for this, just like originally. Am I correct about that, Ms.
I would
Manager?
hope that that's what the board would.
No, that's not what, I don't believe that's the request. That's not my understanding. My understanding, I'm thinking here, if they don't have, they need to know whether they're gonna be there on Thursday nights or not, to have the continuity.
No, it's,
Barbara, is that the same understanding you had for my second of the motion? Is for last year, obviously, they had no competition for it because very, very few, if you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody else was asking for it on Thursday night. They're asking for it for every Thursday night, knowing there's a couple of Thursday nights that they're gonna get bumped from. That's traditionally done with the firemen's and whatever. I believe you understand that.
but are you not asking for the $37,500 to pay the rent on that building?
Yeah, and like I said before, if it turns out to be 40 weeks, then
All right.
then you all get your
All right.
refund or whatever.
Okay, well, do we charge a scout troop for using it? Do we charge a family for a reunion to use it?
You do. Charge
That's
them
right.
$75 for a day.
That's right, but what if they ask to be exempted from that fee?
I'm not asking to be exempted from that fee.
What are you asking for, Mr. Burke?
I'm asking for a portion of your community funding pool.
You're asking for to pay the rent on that public building with public funds.
I think it could be more construed by his request, and at least I think maybe the way some of us are seeing it, maybe it's the divide here, is that he's asking for the money in general for being able to rent a space, and he's aware that when he doesn't, he will not get the money to rent that space, and he will not have that space.
Well, now,
But ultimately, the money request is really for their personal use for getting a space for that year, for that program, which is a nonprofit. They just happen to be choosing our space to rent, is the way I see it personally. I don't know if that is incorrect way to view that.
I don't see any problem with that, that approach to it. I would advise not to approach it as a lockdown on a particular time period, just because I would rather not be an argument that this is either a lease or a license of some kind that cloudies the water in terms of the ownership and function of it. So, I mean, I think if the will of the council is to approve the request, that you do it on the basis of a continual reservation of the night in the same sort of fashion that they have engaged in the past, and it's on a first come first served basis, and the grant is to the extent of up to, what is it? It's basically 50. Is this
50 weeks.
On 50 weeks,
Up
up
to
to
50
50 weeks in the year.
all right, well, what,
If you're going to approve.
but basically, when we give them that, we're giving it to them for that 50 weeks.
I don't think so, Bob.
Yeah, we
No.
are too.
I think
He
he's
still
Bob,
has
you
to come
haven't
and ask
voted
for
yet.
it.
No, we haven't, but that's what they're asking for.
Okay, I'm willing to amend my motion. All right? I firmly believe that you were wanting to lock it in for the 50 weeks. I don't blame you if you would need to have the consistency to know those folks that each and every Thursday they were gonna be there, but apparently that's not the highest thing on your priority. But I'm quite comfortable with a $37.50 donation for this cause, period. If they want to spend some or all of that money on renting the space on a first come, first served basis on Thursdays, let them do so. If they don't spend it all, for whatever reason, it's still their money because it's our grant of $37.50. We're not gonna take something back. But I'm willing to come off the locking it in for the 50 weeks without you having to reserve it.
The primary purpose of Serving Spoon is to feed people who
Right.
otherwise cannot feed themselves for whatever reason. The people who join us for a meal, y'all need to come and visit and sit down and talk with folks. They have all kinds of things.
Yeah, I have.
I have all kinds of issues, just like all of the rest of us, and all they're looking for is a hot meal and some community to sit down. Some people, this is the only meal that they sit down and talk with somebody for an evening. And it's nice to sit down and just discuss what's going on with them. Finding out actually community, involving yourself with other people's lives who you normally don't cross. The whole point of Serving Spoon is to serve others a hot meal. If you want to treat it as something different, paying for the meals, it doesn't make a difference to us as long as we're serving others a hot meal for the evening and helping them feel like part of the community.
Well, I have no
That's the bottom
problem.
line.
I have no problem with that. The stickler with me is that is a building owned by the public. That's it. If you $37.50, I'd be more than willing to give you $37.50 through the non-profit funding pool, but not to lock up the public building every Thursday night for a year.
And we can do that.
Yeah.
We can amend the language in any way you'd like, and we've signed a document in there that says we'll follow whatever agreement
We
you
do
want
the
to
men in here, we're the ones who are gonna vote or not, okay? I'm with you, Bob, I'm okay with that.
Well,
If we go $37.50, with the understanding that they're probably gonna be in line on most of these Thursdays, but we don't have it locked in, and they can come in to the extent that they can, along with, and then I would renew my motion. It'd be a straight $37.50. No consideration whatsoever of locking in time at the JC building, and then Mountain Mediation and Streets of Franklin, and then whatever that gets you down to. If it takes 96 or 97% of it, that's a pretty good bite of the apple. I think they'd be mighty happy with that.
Let me ask you this: who pays for the meals?
The churches do.
The churches pay for the meals.
They pay for the meals.
Okay.
They cook it, they prepare it, they bring it.
So we're not providing any feeding of people that don't have any food.
Not providing the food.
So we're providing you a public building.
We're making it possible for them to serve those
You're just
people.
asking
Yeah.
for rent money. You just
No.
happen to be using it on our facility.
We're trying to involve the community in trying to serve and help people. So whether that uses this building, we've had other buildings, they just weren't, I don't want to get into all those, but they weren't acceptable, whether it was whatever reason. It turns out that the JC building is an ideal location. It wasn't being used on Thursdays, so we happened to be a group that showed up and said, hey, we'll use that building if you're not using it. And we'll continue to do that for as long as we're serving other people. And as long as we're welcome. If we're not welcome, we'll find another place.
Well,
We
speaking,
want to serve people, that's all.
I'm glad that the building is being used. That's what it's for. So.
I would be very comfortable giving the $37.50 grant, and if they choose to rent our building and give some of it back to us, then
That's fine.
good for us. You know?
Well, I second Joe's amended motion.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Can you run down the specifics of
Yeah,
the
let's
motion
run
one
down
more
the
time?
Specifics of the motion
I'm
is
sorry.
$37.50, period, for that applicant. But none for the
Men's Challenge.
Challenge, Mountain Mediation Service, Streets of Franklin Heritage Association. That's gonna put us a few $1,000s over 40.
Puts it
which the
44,750.
mathematics- Well,
44,750.
which the mathematics would mean about 90, whatever percentage each of them would get of their request across the board to equal our 40,000. That's the base, that's my motion.
And I understand that motion to be sufficient to instruct staff about how to calculate that
Oh,
during
yeah.
the contract. So that's, I don't think we need to find the exact, percentage number.
Okay. Vote.
And
That's been-
if that's the motion, I will second the motion.
I already
It's been
did.
seconded.
She seconded it, sorry.
Okay. Any further discussion?
It just didn't.
All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next item of business is contract for engineering services for the water treatment plant. Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Board. And Mr. Henning, I may let you speak on this as well. We've been working on getting this contract drafted, and I apologize, it's kind of come down to the wire, but we were able to look at, with our new engineer on staff, the previous contract that we asked to pull is actually now, with having our engineer on staff, is going to be a savings of about $62,000 to the town for him to be able to do the field work that's required. We've also kind of come down to the wire looking at some final drawings, so I apologize. I know Mr. Henning's read the contract, so if you wouldn't care to maybe go over with the board, kind of to finalize what we've come to maybe in the last hour.
So, you all probably recall that McGill and Associates did the initial phase, their phase one of the design work for the water treatment plant. That contract was long since approved at that stage of the game. This is for now the construction phase and construction oversight and engineering as construction's done. And as Summer said, McGill and Associates has been very accommodating where Nathaniel, our engineer, found where his personal oversight could be a savings to the town. And I think we appreciate McGill's cooperation on that. So that would be the substance of that contract, and I would recommend your approval.
Okay, motion to that effect.
Motion to approve.
Second? All in favor? Okay. Okay, Mr. Collins, you have the floor, sir. Discussion on Main Street parking.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. We've gone around the block a time or two. We've had some seed money to get some plans, drafts, ideas. We've never budgeted any money. We've never agreed on a plan or budgeted any money. We looked at them and sounds good, but don't seem committed, don't seem to have resources right now to really go forward with how we might all like it to look. I personally, though, do not like its current configuration in that it is woefully hard to back out because you can't see anything coming because the car's there beside you. And if there's full-size vehicles back to back there, it's woefully hard to even call it a two-lane. It's very easy to paint different stripes on the pavement. I think it's time. You were talking about paint on pavement. It doesn't last forever, and you can go with. I think it's time we strongly consider taking the north side, going down, and making it parallel parking. May consider the same on the south side. May consider a 45-degree angle rather than the 33 or something. It's a sharper angle. And just do it. If it turns out after a year it's not what we need to do, we send some new people out there striping it another way. But I'm just not satisfied with where we're at, and I am very satisfied that we are not going to invest in a big, expensive plan. I mean, and tell me if you all have a different view of it. But I think we need to do something. I think parallel parking on the north side of Main Street would certainly be a start that I think would be a positive step. And I'll stop there to give anybody else a chance to.
I agree that parallel parking on one side, 45-degree angle parking on the other would be much, much better. And it would actually add parking places, according to the study. It would add 7 parking places.
Is that right?
That's what they say. Make the street wider, and I think it would make pedestrian safety much better. It's hard to see people who are getting ready to walk across those. And
it's hard to see if you're the one walking.
Yeah, if you're the one walking.
Sometimes it's hard to drive through Main Street, depending on how people are parked.
Do we have to get
Yes, you're
DOT
right.
permission to do changes like that?
I don't think so.
Mr. Mayor and Board, if I
Yes,
may,
ma'am.
to address that question, as far as parking, no. But the plan that you have before you, and if the board would like, our town engineer, Mr. Moore, and our town planner, Mr. Setzer, have some kind of pre-drawings of what it would look like from an aerial photo. Because this plan that you do have before you includes your bulb outs to make it a little bit more pedestrian friendly. And then the separate photo that you have that our town planner was able to come up with, that is a sidewalk concept, but now that's not included in your proposal. But if you guys want to take it a step further, I would love for those two gentlemen to come up and kind of tell you what they could do in-house for you.
But there's no money in the budget for that.
There's not, but if you're wanting to look at this long term and actually do it correctly, this might be a way to set a plan and look at it.
I just know that we've had people come and people come and people come and look at plans, and we've never even considered investing that at budget time on any year. Under any circumstances, though, I think that any of these plans are going to be for parallel parking on the right-hand side of, if not both sides, of Main Street. If we did that now, that wouldn't preclude going another step.
It wasn't, and Mr. Collins, what I was trying to allude to earlier is we actually believe we have individuals on staff that could take this further without having to invest in this plan. We have some groundwork, and I know that they've worked on preparing something for this board tonight, and if the board would like to hear them out for a few moments, it may give you guys a little bit more idea of what we're looking at. Gentlemen?
I would like to hear what they have to say.
Gentlemen, come on up and give us some expert opinions here.
Here's another drawing of the
Mary and Barbara, look on this one.
I think the parallel park would be better on the north side.
That is the inside.
That's what I'm saying.
And
That
also,
is
if I
fair.
may,
Yeah.
while we're waiting for the gentleman to get set up, our engineer comes from us from NCDOT, his background, and we've also been in discussions about what would be a great way to maybe try and pair this with DOT, about getting, let's get this done or get on their schedule before, let's have some type of plan in place before they come in either the next 2 or 3 years and do paving. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Moore, Mr. Setzer.
And looking at this, coming from traffic engineering background for DOT, I'm with Mr. Collins. I don't believe that we need to go out and spend another $10,000, $20,000 on a plan. It's going to sit there when we have enough information in front of us right now to make this, one, compliant with ADA, Disability Act, and to provide some better parking and some more ped-friendly facilities. There are a couple issues out there. One, you do not have any space to see a ped coming out in a crosswalk right now. And it's not a super high volume or super high speed facility, but the sight distance right now is bad.
I agree.
And we can try some alternatives. We don't have to go out there and have a huge system and repave. There are some things that we can do some temporary markings. And when I was actually still with DOT, I sent Summer a little bit of information on that, where we can change some markings around out there and try. You don't have to keep it out there. Usually they'll stay maybe 6 months if you do a long-term marking system out there, but a couple weeks you can at least get a feel of how we can change things, do some different angle spots, allow, and I know no one likes this, there will be some spots that are going to be taken off. I mean, there's no way around having that many parking spots and allowing some sight distance in those crosswalks right now. As far as we can try, we try that and see how it works. We can change, and it's not a huge cost to the town to do that. Another thing that we had discussed was when we get a plan in place, we want to be, and everyone's agreeable upon what we want to do, how we like it, how it's set up. We want to get ahead of NCDOT to have the facility set up the way we want before they come through and resurface the road. We don't want to have a deadline and then DOT's going to come through and do the road. We need to get ahead of that and have a plan in place to have that done in place where everything comes through seamlessly and it all comes together. Now another part of that, if we can get NCDOT to consider this an improvement project, the town would only be on the hook for 20% of that improvement project material costs. So the town doesn't pay for funding, engineering, grading. They pay for concrete, material, and basically man hours. So that might be something that we could approach DOT about to see if they would like to do a facility upgrade with us in conjunction where we're only fronting, just basically a 20%.
How long
of the
will we
cost.
take to find that out?
I can get in touch with them and kind of see. One, I think that the first thing we need to do is see what timeline that pavement condition survey is going to be, the next resurfacing is going to be. I think that's the first step. If it's 2 years out, 4 years out, to see where they're at. Now, to get them on board with an improvement project, that might take a little more doing, talking to our division engineer and that sort of thing. But
If I may, Mr. Moore, something I guess would like the board to maybe look at tonight or consider is if you do like just this concept, as Mr. Collins alluded to earlier with half parallel and half angle, let us be able to explore that in-house now, and we can come back with some more information. But if you guys would give us a direction, if you like that model, we can take it in-house and kind of tell you where we can go with it now.
That's fine with me.
Is this changing the angle on the other side too, the plan you're talking about?
we can. I mean, that's definitely the way it is right now. It's hard to get out on the road. And right before I left, we were working with Silva. I don't know if any of y'all have been through there. We actually just changed, before I left, their back street, the way it was set up as well. Some of these plans, to do one lane, you're getting into a little bit of an issue with having the signals being saturated at an AM and PM peak. So typically, somewhere from 7-ish to 8 to 4:30 to 5:30, you have a peak in traffic both, and you'll get a saturated signal where the traffic signal just does not work very well. You get a lot of backup. We see that right here at the bridge project. That's kind of an issue with one lane putting through time. One lane would be great. You can get out easy. I mean, if the traffic volumes were there to do it, I would say that would be something that you'd get in and run with. But we just have a traffic volume almost too high to do that here. Changing angles, yeah, I think that's definitely something we can look at, would help to get out. And then parallel on one side would be, you gain quite a bit of room, so we can shift that center lane over and put some temporary markings in. And the temporary markings, we actually don't even have to grind up. So problem with doing paint or something like that, you have to go grind, and it kind of looks, until the point where we can resurface, it looks bad. So we can do some temporary markings out there and actually cover up center lines and all that. And the cost is actually not that bad. So.
All right.
But Mr. Mayor and the board, I mean, if this would be something that the board would be interested in, we could definitely, I mean, it's kind of late in the month now to get something back to you by your October meeting. But I believe between Mr. Setzer, Mr. Moore, and myself, we could have at least a little bit more information to the board at their November meeting. Again, if you do like this design, to tell you what we could come up with.
It's progress.
Yeah, I just want to see something. I just want to see steps taken, you know.
So what do you want from us tonight? Just a motion or?
No, he's heard from us. They've heard, we've
Yeah.
talked about it.
Well,
I think they
I meant-
kind of know that we don't have a lot of money in the budget, and you're gonna tell us what we need. You're our engineer.
Yeah.
You're basically coming from the DOT background. You're gonna tell us what would be best, given our resources
Yeah.
and the ability to do it.
Yeah, I think the plans here that are anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 or no bigger than this is, between me and Mr. Setzer, I feel like that this is no longer needed. The ones that we have where we paid, we can use some of the information for that.
Okay.
But as far as, we don't need to hire any more outside consultant for the parking study.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I think there's consensus of the board. You guys have an assignment. Thank y'all.
Are there any wants out there? Let me ask the board this.
Yeah, I have one thing that I would like for you to look at. We've got two other problems that involve parking. You through? One is we still have a problem that doesn't cost any money to correct, and that is the number of people working on Main Street that park on Main Street all day long. Number two, we need a couple of loading zones that need to be worked into this because we've got like FedEx, UPS, all that, and then people that, bring in their bicycle to the bicycle shop that's on Main Street are unloading things. So I would like to make a suggestion that you also look at least one loading zone per block. Maybe. That might be unreasonable.
We can look at that.
Yeah, we can look.
Loading zone would be good.
I've seen FedEx there with those guys trying to unload the back of the FedEx truck and
Oh, yeah.
getting their shins scant by the cars coming by.
Sure.
Yeah, the decision on patron parking, that'd be our call to make, but that's independent. But I agree with this. If we could get a loading place or two that would fit into the project, that'd be great.
Well, the parking on Main Street's an attitude problem. Well, it is. It is. That sometimes can be cured with a number of tickets written. Okay, anything else on that? Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at the one where you guys put the extra sidewalk in, which I really like.
Yeah.
By changing the angles and going parallel and putting that in, are we still going to gain some space? Down
Doing the parallel way will gain quite a bit of space out there. And
adding the sidewalk, is that going to kind of take that space away?
It is to some extent.
That right there, I had that drawn about a month or two back when there was some concern at one of the meetings we had about parallel on the right side and people open their doors because down the area on from Wells Fargo down, you've got the steps.
Right.
And that rendering was to cut the steps off and put us into a lower sidewalk with a ramp up with a railing so the people we'd still leave our normal sidewalk. And with that, you would maybe lose a space or two of the parallel, but you'd lose about a foot into the road. The drawing that I had on the aerial, it had a 12-foot lane and an 11-foot lane. And if we went with that, you would have to we'd both be 11-foot lanes.
What are they currently?
I believe they both currently are about, I think, 11 or 12-foot lanes now. But being with the angles, because we got angle on both sides, it's still pinching down because we're going to go 45 on the other side with that rendering. But that would fix that problem, and we'd have another sidewalk. We'd have a wider sidewalk, and
Yeah, because I noticed, especially when we have festivals and things, everybody's like trying to cram and go down that tiny little sidewalk, which is very challenging. So I like that to where it would give almost like a two-way sidewalk.
yeah, you could have a wider sidewalk, and of course a railing because it would be a little lower. It'd be lower than the main sidewalk. But
Is that something we could do in-house?
yeah, I got that rendering done at no cost. So.
The sidewalk.
The actual-
Maybe do in-house.
Yeah, that could be.
We wouldn't have to contract it out, maybe.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. This would be
That
And
amazing.
the current parking study that we printed out with the 45s in the parallel, added 9 parking spaces to Main Street. So if we had to lose 2, we're still gaining 7. And we've got a wider sidewalk that's for vents, and it's ADA compliant. That was a 5-foot sidewalk with a ramp up, so.
Yeah.
Maybe you can have some numbers on that come November.
Yeah, I don't have a construction cost on that. I just went with rendering to see if it was an idea we wanted to go with.
But the only thing we don't want to get into is start changing some, once you get into changing the sidewalk in places, that becomes your baby, and you need to make that whole section ADA compliant. So we need to be careful on how far we go with this when we don't have the amount of budgeted money at that time to bring all this up to ADA compliance.
That's good.
So if we create this one and it's ADA compliant, we also have to make the current one.
At the point we start getting into this working on the sidewalk, I feel like that's the avenue we need to start going through DOT funding sources to see if they can help us out with that.
Agreed.
Thank you, gentlemen. Don't forget bicycle lanes.
We need a bridge.
Okay.
9 foot.
All right, Mr. Collins, you want to discuss the Franklin ABC store?
Yes, thank you. Todd Mason, their manager, is here with us, and I appreciate him being here. And Todd, if you want to come up close to the front, that'd be fine, but because you may need to nod your head yes or no if I've got some things out of place. My understanding is that we have a lease until October or November of 2018.
That's correct.
And with the, at least right now, anything's negotiable, but with the stated option for 3 years after that?
That's correct.
Okay. And my understanding is that it is a little north of $100,000 a year total commitment.
At the current time, yes, sir.
At the current time. And we have a year and about 3 months to explore opportunities. And my further understanding is that space is great. They probably, out of necessity, have more square footage than is totally required by 1,000 foot or so.
Yes, sir.
Somewhere in there. If we do nothing, we can expect to get no better of a deal than what we have now. I would submit to the board that paying over $100,000 a year for a space is way, way too much. You need, my understanding is, a minimum of 5,000 square feet. With building costs at 125 a square or 100 a square, whatever, with some land, you can get into a building and have it paid for in 7 or 8 years of paying $100,000 a year. It is, we are the residual beneficiary of any funds that are not needed for other types of services and all. I spoke to Todd tonight, and just the fact of me raising the issue a few months ago already has the landlords interested in wanting to know what the town's wanting to do, interested to see how they want to handle probably their best tenant in the whole shopping center. I think that the town can go wrong in no way by working together with the ABC board, whether it be considering building on a location. It may be there's a location there that is suitable for renovation. At the very, very least, if no decision was made, I'm satisfied that would be very useful whenever it comes time to renegotiate, if so, with the current tenant. We're talking very serious money in the longer term. We've been able to have the store since, I guess, about 1994 or thereabouts. We don't know if the state is going to privatize. We can't base our decision on what they may or may not do in the future. If they do, I believe they would have to compensate the municipalities for investments. But the per square footage cost that they have currently, in my opinion, is so much over budget that we would benefit greatly by exploring what we can do. It's a good opportunity because we have the time to now. And if we could, over a short time period, end up with $50,000 more per year in our coffers because of not having to pay more than market rate for the rent, it's a lot of money. And if we don't do something quick, our hands are going to be tied, and the current landlord is going to have all the leverage, and we're going to be forced to be in a situation paying way more than we should. I'll stop there for now.
Any board member?
Do you know if they've looked at other potential rental places, or are they just considering?
Now this, Todd, you can jump in any time. We met with Todd, Summer and I did. I had lunch with one of the members. I am under the impression that without impetus from us working together, that there won't be an independent approach to that. Is that a misstatement?
That's not an accurate statement. That is correct.
What would be an accurate statement?
Well, first of all, I think they're willing to work. I think the reason that they're a little leery is the abuse we took X amount of years ago when the deal came up at the new Walmart location, and the abuse that all the board members took during that time. And it was very costly, and they're just sort of a little leery of that. I agree with all your statements you've made, except one. Which was talking about a short period of time putting $50,000 back into your coffers. It will not be a short period of time.
Okay.
So I just don't want the board to be misled. I mean, you're going to have to pay off. If you're going to build a building on X amount of square foot that you're talking about, it's going to take time to pay it off.
Absolutely, it's going to take time to pay off a building. Depends on how many hundreds of thousands it is. Depends on whether you have. Yes. Would you agree, though, that quite possibly 5,000 square feet of good shopping center space where you're at now will be available for about $50,000 a year?
Where we're at?
Not where you're in town. In town, if in fact we found another area in a similar type shopping center, if we did, I'm not here sitting here suggesting I have locations, but if we went to another place and paid rent and got the rental down to about $50,000 a year, which I believe would be about $10 a foot or so, that would immediately save about $50,000 a year.
Right.
You'd have some moving costs.
Oh, correct. Right. And
Sure.
renovations and things.
Sure
of
you
that
would.
nature. The Kmart shopping center has offered us a possibility to look at a space out there. Of course, you're getting into that same situation that you've got at the old Walmart location. There's nobody there.
There is a lot of things to consider.
Right.
Absolutely.
The cost that we're paying right now, if you're asking me, do I think it's a little high per square foot? Yes, sir, I do. I'll be very honest with you. Do I think it is unreasonable when compared to other lots and acreage here in Franklin? No, sir, I do not, because I've checked.
Okay.
But Walmart location is $19 to $20 a square foot. The new Ingalls location out there on 441 South is gonna be in excess of that.
But you're not willing to say that there's not better opportunities out there, you're just not sure what they are.
That is correct. Better opportunities, depends on really what you want to put into it.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you want a square building, it looks like South Carolina or Georgia, yep.
But given the opinion of the board with the hard feelings that had caused years ago, then can I pick up from that if this board just remains silent and won't about their business, that you would stay where you're at, cut your best deal and stay where you're at?
Well, I would say that my current board of directors, which y'all appoint as a board, they have been looking, and I mean, they've instructed me at the last board meeting we had to try to talk to the people at Ingalls, where Ingalls is going, just to see what they're doing, and that's well out of line for what we can pay them.
Would they be willing to have a couple of board members to work as a liaison with them?
I don't know.
Wait, I'm not sure they could be a liaison.
As a committee, I'm talking about as ad hoc committee.
And I don't think you can have a couple. It couldn't be more than one if we did it.
Why would that be?
Because that was changed back when we used to have two people on a committee as representing any town function, as far as water, sewer, police, fire, things of that nature. It got changed to one.
Is that Mr. Henning?
Well, the basic reason was because it was cumbersome to have, and it is the law that the open meetings law that a standing committee of two or more members of this body or of another body subject to the open meetings law is required itself to give notice of its meetings and conduct them as open meetings.
Hey, that's fine. I just want to hear from the board if we're willing to sit here and know that we're in most likelihood going to be committed to that much resources, which otherwise would be in our coffers as we're sitting here trying to put sidewalks on Main Street and try to do a lot of stuff. That, there's a lot of money out there to be on the table, and I don't want us to let the clock tick out on us without trying to see what the better option is.
Mayor Scott,
Yes, sir.
I understand where Mr. Collins is coming from,
Mhm.
and Ms. Woodard and I have spoken about this on numerous occasions, and I've seen many of the town council members in the business, whether they're coming in just to look around
Sure.
or see how we're doing or if they're purchasing or whatever. So it's good. I appreciate them coming out, and I understand his concern. It's all about money in today's society. It is. If you can save here to help the town in the long run, yes, that's beneficial to everybody. There's so many things you've got to take into account and consider. It goes well beyond what the structure of the building looks like, and if it looks very nice and neat and clean, like the state of North Carolina is trying to push with ABC stores, you have to take into account the customers as well. I'm looking around because I don't want one of my customers to look at me and come in tomorrow and say, now you're just talking about me. There are some that come in the liquor store right now that we're in the Bible Belt. And they park at Bilo or behind Bilo where the employees park and walk up the sidewalk because nobody knows, are they going in Bilo? Are they going into that furniture store down there, whatever it's called? Are they going in Peebles? And they just like that. Whereas if you have your own freestanding structure, which Mr. Collins knows I'd love to have, years ago, who wouldn't like to have that? Instead of paying rent and going through all that kind of headaches with an older building. But those are things you've got to consider, and then 60% of our customers are female. I know the town has buildings available. I understand that.
In reference to the remark about somebody from this board, any member of the public is welcome to come to your board meetings.
Yes, sir.
You fall under the same open records and public records, open meetings laws as this board around here does.
Yes, sir.
I do not see any need to officially appoint anyone to that board when any one of you are free to go. If more than two of you should wind up, though, you're not going to be able to take any kind of votes because you'd be in violation of the open meetings law. So right at this point, I don't see any need to appoint anybody to be a liaison committee or whatever, because it's a freestanding board appointed by this board.
I want to be heard.
You may be heard, yes, sir.
This board is willing to believe that any one of us can go to a meeting and all of a sudden start working with them as a committee and have the impetus of the town behind us on seeing whether we have better uses for our money. That ain't happening. If we don't get something appointed, get something going with them, working together with them to see what's available, it's not happening. This is a way too much per year. Way too much per year at a location which is not going to be as good 2 or 3 years from now as it is now, and not 4 or 5 years as it is 2 or 3 years. It is a spot with the new Ingles coming. It's going to be that much less populous. But to think that any one of us would have the authority to act on behalf of the town just by showing up at one of their monthly meetings is a misnomer, and it's a mistake. And if the town board members are willing to let this opportunity pass and this much money on the table without taking a good, solid approach, I'm disappointed.
No member of this board, including myself, has the right to go to that board and do anything officially for the town, because that is their board. They are appointed by it. And I don't know that we're going anywhere with this right now. You're welcome to go. Has anybody ever shut the door on you?
No, they haven't, Bob.
Okay.
No,
then
they haven't.
I don't know whether there's an issue. You can go and you can voice and express an opinion. Any one of you can.
I will say to Mr. Collins' side, I mean, I don't want to miss an opportunity to open some. I don't care if it's a liaison or if it's. I would hate to miss an opportunity to open up some kind of dialogue with them, at least have a discussion about it. It definitely directly impacts us. It directly impacts our budget eventually. I mean, we're all connected. It's a very small town, so it's all economically driving one another. I would hate to just miss an opportunity, even if it's just as simple as. Summer knows to keep talking to, Mr. Raby and the board. So.
Mr. Kimsey, you're having that dialogue right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Mr. Mason's here. And I just do not think that legally I can appoint anybody.
Oh, and I'm not asking.
To go, and I can appoint or, give my blessing to anybody that wants to go and be in any of their meetings. It's just like our meetings are all open to the public. And you can express your opinions.
Oh, legally you can appoint somebody. Don't say you can't do it legally. You may not want to. Don't say you can't do it legally. I think the board wants to have this opportunity, which we know instinctively is not going to happen unless we help push it along.
There's nothing to keep us from going there, Joe. There's nothing that
If
keeps
Bob, if
any
you
of us
don't
from going.
want to fight the battle, just say you don't want to fight the battle.
I
do.
do. Okay, you have wanted to fight the battle. You fought the battle when you were the mayor.
I'm not sure I did.
Yes, you did. Too.
What did I do?
Yeah, you did. Well, you were all in favor of building that new big building, which the public got riled up about big time. I think we need a little cooling off here tonight. And I would advise this board to do your duty. And it is your duty to be keeping up with things, just as it's the duty of the ABC board to be coming to us when there is a problem that we need to know about. And I think apparently y'all are running a pretty good show out there. I'm one of your customers, and I park right in front of your store. It's a well-run store, exceptionally run store. You ought to go to one of the stores in South Carolina, but take your gun with you when you go. But I think right now, I don't think we're going anywhere tonight.
To help the discussion and to calm things down, like you said, Mr. Collins, would you be able to come to our next meeting and let's just talk openly about some ideas that you may have or places that we could look? Or would one of the other board members?
When is your next meeting?
We meet, and it's on our website, and Summer's aware of it as well. We meet on the second Tuesday of every month at 8 a.m. at the store.
And that we're here on that third Tuesday. I will do my very best.
I'll touch base with you, remind you if you want me to.
And I'm not So that's a good indication, and absent anything otherwise, that's probably best we can get.
Well, and at least start, start
I-
and talk to them.
I think y'all got a dialogue going. I think the board is aware of all the situation, and we have a dialogue going. Madam Manager, you had a comment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Board, and what I would ask the board, and certainly Mr. Mason and I have a great relationship. I certainly wouldn't care to go to their meetings as well and start that dialogue and bring back any information I can as well. I'd be glad to do that.
Okay. All right. Any further? Okay. One other thing, I just wanted to bring something up about the nonprofit funding pool. I just want to throw this out. I'd like for the TDA and the TDC to start considering the possibility of funding some things. Like we had a request from the Macon County Historical Society, the Scottish Tartan Museum. There were a couple of other things here that are very tourist oriented. I would love to see a rethinking maybe of where some of the TDA and TDC funds are going to help the town out a little. I just want to mention a couple of things. Right now, the town is spending $42,000 a year on festivals. And we have a July the 4th Pumpkin Fest, Veterans Day, 2 nights of Winter Wonderland. You may say, well, why? Why are we spending that kind of money? Because it increases the sales tax revenues, which goes back into our coffers. That's one of the reasons. Plus the fact that it makes a really good town to live in. So I would just hope that maybe we might have, when we're talking about dialogue, a little discussion about what we might want to do to where we can cut some of these things loose from the nonprofit funding pool and put them into areas where they probably would be more likely to fit, like increasing the tourism. All right, anybody else on the board got anything else tonight? Madam Manager? Counselor?
No.
Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A second? All in favor? We stand adjourned.
Don't we have to